On a stormy night, a woman's car broke down on a desolate road. Seeing her stranded and desperate, a local farmer offered her shelter for the night, thinking it was just a simple act of kindness. But by morning, military trucks rolled into town, helicopters thundered overhead, all searching for that same woman. What followed changed not only the farmer's life, but the fate of the entire town. Welcome to Unraveled Whisper, where simple acts hide the deepest stories. Adam Thompson was a farmer, 68 years old, with hands shaped by soil and seasons. He lived his whole life on the same patch of land, the Thompson farm, tucked in a quiet valley where the city lights had never reached. 3 generations had worked the soil before him, and by now even the trees seemed to know his name. Most of his siblings had left for the city decades ago, chasing careers and comfort. Adam stayed. He'd never been drawn to traffic or tall buildings. The land gave him enough. A few acres of wheat and hay, a rusting red barn that groaned in the wind, and rows of corn that seemed to shrink a little more each season. It wasn't much, but it was home. He and his wife Ruth had built a life here, raised 2 boys who now lived halfway across the country. They called when they could, sent pictures of grandkids in Halloween costumes, and talked about jobs Adam didn't quite understand. They loved him. He knew that. But they belonged to a different world now. Earlier that afternoon, Adam had been out in the north field, checking on the winter wheat. A few rows showed signs of waterlogging, and he'd spent an hour clearing out a runoff path with a shovel. His back ached by the time he trudged up to the house, boots heavy with mud. The sky was already starting to turn that odd yellow-gray, the kind that made you look twice. That evening, the storm rolled in fast. Wind snapped through the fields like it had a grudge, bending trees and rattling the windows. The sky turned the color of bruised steel. Rain came in sideways, slapping the siding like it meant to peel the house apart. From the kitchen, Adam watched the treetops whip and bow. Somewhere outside, something slammed hard and didn't stop. He grabbed his coat. Ruth looked up from the table, where a pot roast sat steaming fresh bread on the side. "Dinner's ready, Adam." "Tarp's loose on the shed again," he said, lighting the old lantern. "If it rips clean, I'll have a bigger mess come morning." Ruth didn't argue, but her eyes stayed on him. "Be careful." He gave her shoulder a gentle pat and stepped outside, boots already sinking into soft, wet soil. The tarp was louder now. Adam tied it down and turned to head back when something caught his eye beyond the pasture. Red blinkers, low to the ground, barely visible through the curtain of rain. He raised the lantern. There was a car off the road, front wheels angled awkwardly into the ditch. The shape of a woman stood beside it, coat pulled tight, hair plastered to her face. He crossed the fence line, mud sucking at his boots. "Evening, ma'am," he called over the wind. "Everything all right?" The woman turned, startled. Her eyes flashed. "Do I look all right?" she snapped. Then after a breath, her tone softened. "I'm sorry. That was rude. I've been stuck here over an hour," she said quickly. "Car won't start. No signal. No internet. I tried calling 911. Nothing." Adam stepped closer, raising the lantern between them. She looked to be in her late 60s, maybe early 70s. Well-dressed but soaked through. Her coat was the expensive kind, city-made, not local. Her heels were caked in mud. Adam glanced at the sky as thunder rolled again. "Where you headed?" "Redstone Ridge. My son's being promoted. First star. I was trying to beat the storm. GPS sent me this way, and now I don't even know where I am." Adam exhaled through his nose. "Redstone Ridge, 60 miles east. This back road cuts through the hills, but it floods easy. You're not getting through tonight." She looked back at the car. Lights dimming now, battery nearly gone. "I can't miss it," she whispered. Adam nodded slowly. "Look, my house is just past that ridge. Dry roof. My wife just set dinner. Warmer in there than freezing out here." He kept his voice even, calm, not pushy. The woman glanced back at her car. The storm howled louder now, wind tearing at her coat. Rain stung her face. She didn't answer right away, just looked at the dark hills around her, the empty road, the mud swallowing her heels. She didn't have much choice. "All right," she said, "lead the way." She fell in step beside him, shoes sinking into the mud. "Name's Adam," he offered. She hesitated, then said, "Margaret." Margaret Langley. By the time they stepped inside, Margaret was soaked through, hair dripping, shoulders tense with cold. She didn't say much. Ruth didn't ask questions, just handed her a towel, then dry clothes, soft and oversized. "Bathroom's down the hall, hon. Take your time." Margaret nodded once. The door closed behind her with a gentle click. Warmth, a dry flannel shirt, the scent of roasted meat and bread drifting in. She'd never admit it, but it almost broke her. The quiet kindness of it. She sat quietly at the edge of the table, wrapped in the flannel Ruth had given her. Her soaked coat hung by the stove, dripping onto a towel laid out beneath it. The power had gone out some time ago. Now it was just the fire and an oil lamp casting soft, flickering light across the walls. Ruth poured coffee into chipped mugs. "It's not fancy," she said, "but it's hot." Margaret took it with both hands, letting the warmth settle into her fingers. Adam served what was left of the roast. Kept it warm best we could. They ate quietly at first. The wind hissed across the roof, then fell into a lull. "No signal out here?" Margaret finally asked. Adam gave a small shake of the head. "No signal. No internet. No road crews in weather like this. If the world ends tonight, we'll hear about it next week." Margaret cracked a tired smile. "Feels like another planet." "Most days it is," Ruth said. Margaret nodded slowly. "I was trying to make it to my son's ceremony. Tomorrow morning. He's being promoted. First general in the family." Adam paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Your son's name?" "David Langley." He set the fork down, eyes narrowing with sudden recall. "Langley. Wasn't he the one behind that overseas extraction? The blackout op that pulled those trap teams out when everything went sideways? That mission made headlines for weeks." Margaret blinked. "You know about that?" "I know someone who served with him," Adam said. "Said he saved lives, that your boy stood in the path of hell and never flinched." Margaret lowered her eyes, voice softer. "He's always been like that. Even as a kid, he'd take the fall for things his brother did. Wouldn't walk away from anyone." "Sounds like someone worth following," Ruth said. Margaret smiled at that. Really smiled. Not out of politeness, but pride. Thunder rolled again in the distance. The room quieted, but it wasn't hollow. It was the kind of quiet that comes after stories are shared and something deeper settles in. Margaret looked toward the fire. "I'm glad I broke down out here." Adam gave a small nod. "So are we." The plates were cleared, the last of the coffee poured. Outside, the wind had settled into a low, steady moan. Ruth folded a blanket over her arm. "Spare room's made up. It's not much, but it's warm." Margaret hesitated, then gave a quiet nod. "You didn't have to, but thank you. I wasn't looking forward to freezing behind the wheel tonight." Adam gave a small smile. "Sometimes the storm decides for you." The house settled into silence. Margaret lay awake for a while, listening to the hum of wind against the window pane. The room was simple, wood-paneled walls, a narrow bed, and the faint scent of cedar. She'd folded the spare blanket over herself, still half wrapped in the comfort of strangers' kindness. It had been years since someone offered help with no strings. Outside, the storm thinned into mist. Then morning came, not with birdsong or sunlight, but with a low, trembling sound that rose like distant thunder. It came in waves, steady and unnatural. Ruth stirred first. "What's that?" The walls vibrated. Silverware in the sink gave a faint rattle. Adam was already at the window, pulling on his coat. "That ain't wind." Margaret sat up quickly. The sound grew louder, sharper. The familiar chop of rotor blades overhead. A deep hum filled the room as military trucks rolled down the gravel road in tight formation, tires throwing up fog and grit. "They found me," Margaret whispered. Outside, the gravel churned beneath 7 large green vehicles. Doors opened before the engine stopped. Armed soldiers stepped out, scanning the house with practiced precision. The ground trembled as a black helicopter swept over the tree line and descended just beyond the barn, kicking up wind and broken twigs. The 3 of them stood on the porch as the side hatch of the helicopter swung open. A man in full dress uniform jumped down before the rotors slowed. He moved with purpose, eyes scanning, until they landed on her. "Mom!" His voice cracked over the noise. "Mom, you okay?" Margaret stepped forward, boots crunching on frozen dirt. "David." "Oh, thank God," she said, her voice breaking as she reached for him. The uniform, the worry in his eyes, the son she hadn't seen in far too long. He reached her in seconds and pulled her into a tight embrace, his hand behind her head like he still needed proof she was real. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I was sure something happened. We couldn't reach you. No calls, no signal. I had teams out looking for wreckage." "I'm all right," she murmured. "The storm hit harder than I expected. The car's still stuck somewhere out there. But they took me in. These folks, they didn't know who I was, didn't ask anything. Just opened the door." David looked up at Adam and Ruth, his eyes tired but grateful. "You have no idea what this means." Adam gave a quiet nod. "Didn't do much. Just fed her and gave her a roof." Margaret wiped her eyes, half laughing. "You should have seen the look on his face when I told him my son was being promoted to general." Ruth chuckled softly, brushing her hands on her apron. "Didn't say much after that, just kept chewing?" David smiled, then glanced around. "No signal, no road access. You folks live off the map." Adam shrugged. "Power's spotty. Landlines haven't worked right in years. No cell towers near enough to care. When the lines go down, so do we. Storm like this, we disappear." David stepped closer, voice lower. "Let me do something. You helped her when no one else could. That matters." Adam shook his head gently. "We didn't do it for a reward." But Margaret laid a hand on his arm. "Adam, not for you. For everyone. You're not the only one out here." Adam paused, watching the soldiers adjust equipment by the trucks. A few neighbors stood at a distance, coats buttoned, eyes cautious but curious. He glanced toward them, then back at David. "All right, but not just for us. What we need's simple. A working line, something reliable. Emergency radio maybe. Repeater tower. Internet access that doesn't vanish when the wind blows sideways. If someone breaks a leg in the middle of the night, they shouldn't have to wait 3 days to be found." David nodded once. "We can make that happen. Quietly. I'll talk to the right folks. Civil communications, telecom agencies. Won't be flashy, but it'll stick." Adam gave a single nod. That was thanks enough. From the fence, one of the older neighbors stepped forward. "You're serious about that?" David turned to him. "I wouldn't say it if I wasn't." The man let out a low chuckle. "Well, maybe this winter just got a little less lonely." Murmurs rose behind him. Not loud, just a ripple of cautious hope. Ruth came out with a folded coat, handing it to Margaret. Margaret smiled, slipping it on. "Dry and warm. You didn't have to." Ruth smiled back. "You didn't either." Margaret turned to Adam, her voice quiet but steady. "You didn't just give me a roof. You reminded me there's still people who do good without needing a reason." Adam rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe that is the reason." David stepped toward the truck, then turned once more. "We're heading back to the base. Ceremonies in a few hours. You're both invited. Mom's the guest of honor." Adam looked to Ruth. She gave a small nod, already pulling on her coat. "Well, guess it's time we use the good boots." The ceremony was held just after noon in the main hangar of the local Air Force base. Flags hung high, the echo of polished boots on concrete, rows of dignitaries' uniforms, and sharp salutes. Margaret stood beside David, her hand gently tucked in the crook of his arm. General David Carlton stepped to the podium, the applause still fading as he scanned the crowd. His voice carried clear and steady. "Today I stand here not only proud to wear these stars, but grateful to my mother for raising me to never forget where I came from, and to two people who reminded me what it means to serve, even outside the uniform." He turned, gesturing subtly toward the side seats. Cameras turned. Adam and Ruth sat quietly, out of place among brass and ribbons, but calm in their own skin. They didn't know who she was, didn't ask, just saw someone caught in a storm and opened the door. That's the kind of service that never makes the news. But I want everyone here to know, without them, I might not be standing here. Ruth's eyes glistened, though she didn't blink. Adam shifted, cleared his throat, and just nodded once. For them, the moment didn't need more. A week later, the hills looked much the same. The roads were muddy, the air still dry and sharp. But something had changed. The tower went up near the ridge. Not tall, not loud, but steady. And with it came a signal. Clear, consistent, dependable. In kitchens and porches across the valley, people sat with glowing screens and wide eyes. Calls went out. Grandparents waved through video calls, smiling through tears. A rancher reached his brother 3 states away after months. A mother heard her daughter's voice again. Inside Adam and Ruth's kitchen, the old radio had been replaced with a small router light and a blinking landline. Ruth clicked through a grainy screen and smiled. "She's walking now," she whispered, watching their granddaughter stumble across a living room floor on the other end of the country. Adam leaned on the counter, arms crossed, just watching. The world felt a little closer now. Not louder, not busier, just closer. And from far off, past the fence and the trees, a soft hum drifted down from the new tower, steady as a heartbeat. Some kindness doesn't echo loud, but it keeps people connected, sometimes in ways they never expect. Some stories don't just entertain, they stay with us, quietly reminding us what truly matters. If this one stayed with you, be sure to subscribe, so you won't miss the next one waiting to be unraveled. And if it made you think, feel, or pause, tap like and share it. Someone else might need this moment too. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next story.